When recovery becomes a risk. At some point, rest stops feeling restorative. Slowing down creates anxiety instead of relief. Recovery feels dangerous, like something important might be lost if the body lets go. The shift is not a decision. It is a consequence, the result of years spent in an environment where letting go was never safe. The body learned the lesson too well, and now it cannot unlearn it simply because circumstances have changed. Researchers noticed this shift in people who had lived for years under constant demand, high responsibility, continuous pressure, lives where effort never truly ended. Their bodies adapted in a surprising way. Instead of wearing down visibly, they restructured themselves around the expectation of permanent vigilance, creating a baseline that treated alertness as normal and disengagement as threat. To understand why this matters, we need to look at how recovery is learned. Biologically, rest is safe only when the nervous system trusts that nothing urgent will follow. When that trust erodes, recovery itself triggers alarm. The trust is not built through intention. It is built through experience, through repeated episodes in which rest is allowed to complete without interruption. When those episodes do not occur, the trust never forms. In these individuals, slowing down increased stress markers. Heart rate rose during rest. Sleep became lighter. The body treated disengagement as threat. The treatment was not irrational. It was a faithful record of lived experience, a system that had learned from years of evidence that slowing down was reliably followed by renewed demand. This was not psychological weakness. It was conditioning. Years of unresolved demand taught the system that vigilance was necessary for survival. Letting go felt unsafe. The feeling was not a belief that could be argued away. It was wired into the body's regulatory systems, encoded in the patterns of hormonal release and nervous system activation that govern the transition between effort and rest. Aging accelerated sharply in this state. Repair pathways stayed offline. Inflammation lingered. Even healthy habits failed to restore resilience. The habits were present, but the body's context for interpreting them had changed. Exercise that should have promoted recovery instead reinforced alertness. Sleep that should have deepened remained shallow because the nervous system refused to fully disengage. What made this especially dangerous was invisibility. On the surface, these people looked disciplined and in control. But internally, the body had lost its ability to stand down. The loss was hidden behind competence, behind the appearance of someone who had their life well organized. Others admired the consistency without recognizing that it had become compulsive, driven not by choice, but by a nervous system that no longer permitted rest. The moment recovery becomes a risk is not dramatic. It is subtle. A point where effort feels safer than rest, where motion feels more protective than stillness, where the body has quietly decided that the cost of letting go exceeds the cost of staying engaged. And once the body crosses that line, longevity stops responding to comfort and begins responding only to perceived control. As researchers examined this state more closely, they found a consistent biological pattern. The nervous system had learned to associate stillness with vulnerability. During years of constant demand, recovery windows were repeatedly interrupted. Rest never fully completed before the next pressure arrived. Over time, the body adapted by treating vigilance as the default. The adaptation was efficient. It removed the energy-costly process of transitioning between states and replaced it with a single, sustained posture of readiness. The efficiency came at the expense of repair, but in the short term, it kept the system functional under relentless conditions. When these individuals attempted to rest, stress responses activated instead of shutting down. Cortisol rose, heart rate increased, sleep remained shallow. Repair signals were overridden by alertness. The override was automatic, occurring below the level of conscious awareness. The person might intend to relax, might even believe they were relaxing. while the body escalated its defense. This explained why common recovery advice failed. More sleep did not help. Meditation increased anxiety. Vacations felt restless rather than restorative. The body resisted disengagement. The resistance was not stubbornness, it was protection. A system doing exactly what it had been trained to do by an environment that had punished rest for years. Biologically, this made sense. The system had been trained. Letting go had been punished repeatedly. Staying alert had been rewarded with survival. The body chose the strategy that had kept it alive, even after the conditions that required that strategy had changed. Researchers described this as a reversal of safety signaling. Effort felt predictable. Rest felt uncertain. The body chose the state it trusted most. The reversal was complete enough that the usual prescriptions for health became counterproductive, making this one of the most difficult aging patterns to address with conventional approaches. Aging accelerated under these conditions because repair never regained priority. Cells waited for safety that never arrived. Inflammation became chronic. Resilience eroded quietly. The erosion was the biological consequence of a system that had permanently reorganized around vigilance, sacrificing the processes that maintain long-term capacity in favor of the processes that sustain short-term readiness. What shocked scientists was how reversible this state could be, but only under specific conditions. Recovery had to be protected completely. No interruptions, no anticipation, no performance expected afterward. The conditions were narrow, and they had to be maintained long enough for the body to accumulate evidence that rest was genuinely safe. A single interruption could reset the process. When those conditions were met, even briefly, biology softened. Stress markers dropped. Sleep deepened. The body remembered how to recover. The memory had not been erased. It had been suppressed, overridden by a more recent and more powerful pattern. When the newer pattern was interrupted long enough, the older one resurfaced. This revealed a crucial truth. Recovery becomes a risk only when life teaches the body that rest is never allowed to finish. The conflict deepens when this conditioning meets modern expectations. High performers are praised for endurance. Availability is rewarded. Rest is tolerated only if it improves output. The message is clear and consistent. Disengagement is acceptable only when it serves re-engagement. Recovery is not valued in its own right. It is valued as a tool for productivity. And the body absorbs this message as confirmation that rest is conditional. People learn to distrust recovery. Slowing down feels like losing ground. Letting go feels irresponsible. The body mirrors this belief, staying alert even in stillness. The mirroring is not metaphorical. The body literally maintains the physiological posture of engagement during periods that should be restorative, because the cultural and personal context has taught it that rest without justification is risk. Researchers observed that individuals in this state often intensified control. More structure, tighter routines, constant monitoring. These created a sense of safety, but blocked repair even further. The control was the body's attempt to create predictability in the absence of trust, to make the environment legible enough that vigilance could ease. But control without genuine safety only deepens the pattern. The nervous system mistook control for stability. As long as effort continued, nothing unexpected could happen. But without disengagement, biology never switched into renewal. The renewal pathways were intact, but dormant, waiting for a signal that control-based strategies could not provide. Attempts to force recovery often backfired. Scheduled rest felt artificial. Mindfulness increased awareness of threat. The body resisted anything that removed vigilance. The resistance was proportional to the depth of the conditioning, strongest in those who had spent the longest time in environments where rest was interrupted. What finally shifted the system was not persuasion, but proof. Extended periods where nothing followed rest, no demand, no evaluation, no sudden return to pressure. The proof needed to be experiential, not cognitive. The body does not update its safety models based on arguments. It updates them based on evidence. When these conditions appeared, biology responded slowly at first, then decisively. Stress rhythms softened, sleep regained depth, recovery pathways reactivated. The reactivation was not instant. It followed the same gradual pattern as the original conditioning, requiring repeated experiences of uninterrupted rest before the body accepted that the new pattern was reliable. The conflict, then, is not about willpower. It is about relearning safety, teaching the body that rest can end without consequence. Until that lesson is learned, longevity remains locked behind a system that believes stopping is dangerous. The climax of this story is the realization that when recovery feels risky, the body has not failed. It has adapted too well. Years of unresolved demand taught the system that vigilance was survival. Letting go felt like exposure. Aging accelerated not from stress alone, but from the loss of trust and rest. The loss of trust is the deeper injury, more damaging than any single stressor, because it prevents the body from accessing the very processes that would allow it to heal. The resolution is not forcing relaxation. It is restoring safety gradually. Lives where effort truly ends, where recovery is protected long enough to complete, where nothing waits immediately afterward. The restoration is not a technique. It is a restructuring of conditions, a deliberate redesign of the environment, so that the body receives the proof it needs to release its grip. Longevity responds to safety, not pressure. When the body relearns that rest is allowed to finish, repair resumes. Flexibility returns. Aging softens. Modern culture celebrates endurance. Biology celebrates resolution. When these values clash, the body chooses caution. The choice is not conscious. It is systemic, made by regulatory processes that weigh the accumulated evidence of a lifetime and select the strategy that has most reliably ensured survival. In cultures that celebrate endurance, the evidence overwhelmingly points toward vigilance, and the body acts accordingly. But caution is not permanent. With proof, it can ease, and when it does, time begins to loosen its hold once more. The loosening is gradual, mirroring the gradual tightening that produced it, but it is real and measurable, visible in the same markers that once tracked the acceleration of decline. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing for longevity is not stress itself. It is a life that never teaches the body it is safe to stop. Subscribe to join the journey.